Millionaire CEO was sure she had long been happy with another. When he saw twin girls, he realized the truth. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Family, your own family channel. May the Almighty bless every woman with unwavering strength, endless wisdom, and a heart so pure that it uplifts everyone around her. May every woman who guides, nurtures, protects, and loves be honored for the immeasurable sacrifices she makes. You are the pillars of families, the light in the darkest nights, and the silent warriors whose love shapes the world. May no sorrow touch your hearts, no burden break your spirit, and may your lives overflow with peace, joy, and blessings beyond measure. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, I am with Mr. Peter. Let's start with love. Kelly Hammond had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in her head during the drive from the clinic to Norton Enterprises. She would walk into Daniel's office, close the door behind her, and place the ultrasound images on his desk. She would watch his face transform from confusion to understanding to pure joy. He would pull her into his arms, spin her around like he did on their wedding day, and whisper against her hair that she had just made him the happiest man alive. They would call his mother together, plan the nursery, argue playfully about names. Everything would be perfect. Kelly pushed open the heavy glass doors of Norton Enterprises at 9:15 in the evening, her heart hammering against her ribs. The security guard looked up from his desk and smiled. Mrs. Norton, working late again? Just need to see my husband for a minute, Kelly said, returning his smile even though her hands were trembling. Inside her purse, tucked into a lavender envelope, were 2 ultrasound images, 2 distinct heartbeats, 2 tiny miracles that would change everything. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt eternal. Kelly caught her reflection in the polished steel doors and barely recognized herself. She was glowing, her brown skin radiant, her dark eyes bright with a secret that was about to explode into the most beautiful reality. At 28 years old, Kelly Hammond Norton was the director of marketing at her husband's company, a rising star in the business world, and now she was going to be a mother of twins. The thought still made her dizzy with disbelief and wonder. The executive floor was quiet, most offices dark. Only Daniel's corner office blazed with light, his name emblazoned on the frosted glass door in bold letters. Kelly walked toward it, her heels clicking softly on marble floors, her free hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. In there, barely visible to the world, 2 lives were growing. 2 perfect combinations of her and Daniel. 2 reasons why everything they had built together suddenly mattered so much more. She reached for the door handle and paused. Should she knock? This was her husband's office, but it was also after business hours. Maybe he was on an important call. Maybe she should wait. No. Kelly shook her head at her own hesitation. This was Daniel. Her Daniel. The man who had pursued her relentlessly through business school, who had proposed on a rooftop in Paris, who still left notes in her briefcase, telling her she was the most brilliant woman he had ever met. He would want to know immediately. He would want to share this moment. Kelly turned the handle and pushed open the door without knocking. The scene before her didn't make sense at first. Her brain couldn't process what her eyes were seeing. It was like looking at an abstract painting, where all the shapes were familiar but arranged in an impossible configuration. Christy Bell, Daniel's executive assistant, was bent over Daniel's mahogany desk. Her skirt was hiked up around her waist, her blouse unbuttoned and hanging off one shoulder. And Daniel Norton, Kelly's husband of 3 years, the man whose ring she wore, whose name she had taken, whose children she was carrying, was behind Christy. His hands gripping her hips, his pants around his ankles, his face twisted in an expression Kelly had seen 1,000 times before, an expression that used to be reserved only for her, time fractured into sharp, cutting pieces. Kelly stood in the doorway for 5 full seconds. 5 seconds that felt like 5 hours. 5 seconds that destroyed 3 years of marriage and 6 years of love and every single dream she had allowed herself to build. Christy saw her first. The woman's eyes went wide with shock, and she let out a small gasp that made Daniel turn his head. His face drained of all color when he saw Kelly standing there, still as a statue, her hand still on the door handle, her purse hanging from her shoulder. "Kelly!" Daniel's voice cracked. He pulled away from Christy, stumbling, trying to pull up his pants with shaking hands. "Jesus, Kelly! This isn't... wait, let me explain." Christy was scrambling to button her blouse, her face flushed with shame and something else. Satisfaction, maybe, or triumph. Kelly couldn't tell and didn't care. Kelly walked into the office with slow, deliberate steps. She didn't look at Christy, didn't acknowledge the woman existed. She walked straight to Daniel's desk, opened her purse with steady hands that didn't feel like they belonged to her body anymore, and removed her wedding ring. The diamond caught the light, sparkling like all the promises Daniel had made, and just shattered. She placed the ring on the mahogany desk, right where Christy had just been bent over, and finally looked at her husband. Daniel's face was white, his eyes desperate, his mouth opening and closing like he was trying to find words that didn't exist. "Kelly, please, just listen. I hope she was worth it." Kelly's voice was ice, not cold, ice, frozen solid, hard enough to cut, unbreakable. She heard the words come out of her mouth and marveled at how calm she sounded when everything inside her was screaming. Daniel reached for her, and Kelly stepped back so fast he flinched. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't you dare touch me." "This was a mistake," Daniel said, his voice rising with panic. "Baby, this was nothing. It meant nothing." "Stop calling me baby. Kelly, please, we can work through this. There is no we anymore." Kelly turned and walked toward the door. Behind her, she heard Daniel stumbling after her, heard Christy saying something in a quiet voice, heard her husband's footsteps on the marble floor. "Kelly, wait! Where are you going?" She stopped at the elevator and pressed the button. The doors opened immediately, as if the universe wanted to help her escape. Kelly stepped inside and finally looked back at Daniel. He was standing in the hallway, his shirt untucked, his hair disheveled, his face wrecked with fear and regret. Too late. All of it was too late. "Kelly, I love you," Daniel said, and his voice broke on the words. "I love you so much. This was a mistake. One stupid mistake. Don't leave. Please don't leave." Kelly looked at him and felt absolutely nothing. The man before her was a stranger. The Daniel Norton she had loved didn't exist. Maybe he never had. "I was coming to tell you something tonight," Kelly said softly, as the elevator doors started to close. "But you'll never know what it was." The last thing she saw was Daniel's face crumpling with desperation, and Christy Bell standing in his office doorway, watching it all with dark, unreadable eyes. Kelly rode the elevator down in complete silence. She walked past the security guard, who called out a cheerful goodnight. She got into her car in the parking garage and sat there with her hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Inside her purse, the lavender envelope held 2 ultrasound images, 2 tiny beans floating in darkness, 2 heartbeats that would never know their father because their father had chosen 5 minutes of pleasure with his assistant over everything that mattered. Kelly's phone started ringing. "Daniel." She declined the call. It rang again, immediately. Again. Again. She turned off her phone, started her car, and drove. She didn't go to their penthouse. She couldn't stomach the thought of sleeping in their bed, touching their things, breathing air that smelled like the life they had built together. Instead, Kelly drove to a hotel downtown, checked in under her maiden name, Hammond, not Norton, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. Her hand moved to her stomach. "It's okay," she whispered to the 2 lives growing inside her. "We don't need him. We never will." Kelly Hammond cried until dawn, and then she stopped crying forever. By the time the sun rose over the city, Kelly had already called her lawyer, emptied their joint bank account of every dollar she had earned, and begun planning her disappearance. Daniel Norton had made his choice that night. Now Kelly was making hers. She was choosing herself. She was choosing her children. She was choosing to become someone who would never need a man like Daniel Norton again. And she would become someone so powerful, so successful, so utterly untouchable, that when Daniel finally realized what he had lost, it would destroy him completely. That was a promise Kelly made to herself and her unborn daughters in a hotel room as the city woke up around her. A promise she would spend the next 5 years keeping. Chapter 2. The Queen who rose the boardroom fell silent when Kelly Hammond walked in. Not Kelly Norton anymore, never Norton again. She had taken back her maiden name the day the divorce was finalized, and with it, she had taken back her power, her identity, and her future. That was 5 years ago. Now Kelly Hammond was a name that made executives nervous and competitors terrified. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kelly said, placing her leather portfolio on the mahogany table, "let me show you exactly why Norton Enterprises is about to lose their biggest client to Hammond and Associates." She was 33 years old and looked like she had been carved from ambition and fire. Her tailored black suit fit perfectly over her curves. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant twist, and her dark eyes held the kind of confidence that came from surviving hell and building heaven from the ashes. The presentation she delivered was flawless, ruthless, and absolutely devastating to the company that still bore her ex-husband's name. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. The client, a massive pharmaceutical corporation that had been with Norton Enterprises for over a decade, signed with Hammond and Associates on the spot. Kelly shook hands, smiled professionally, and left the building with another victory under her belt. Her assistant, Jennifer, was waiting by the car with a tablet full of messages. "3 more companies want to schedule meetings," Jennifer said as Kelly slid into the back seat. And Daniel Norton's office called again. "Block the number." "Already did." He called from a different line. Kelly's jaw tightened. "Block every number associated with Norton Enterprises. If he wants to reach me, he can send a carrier pigeon. I still won't respond." Jennifer grinned. "You're terrifying. I love it." Kelly allowed herself a small smile as the car pulled into traffic. Terrifying. Yes. She supposed she was. Good. The world had tried to break her, and instead she had become unbreakable. Hammond and Associates had grown from a one-woman startup operating out of a tiny office to a marketing empire with branches in 4 cities. Forbes had called her the Phoenix in their latest issue, the woman who rose from the ashes of a broken marriage to burn down the empire that betrayed her. The feature had included photos of Kelly in power poses, quotes about resilience and female entrepreneurship, and exactly 0 mentions of Daniel Norton. Kelly had made sure of that. He didn't get to be part of her story anymore. He was a footnote, a mistake she had learned from and left behind. "We're picking up Dahlia and Magnolia from school," Kelly told the driver. "The usual spot." "Yes, Mom." Kelly leaned back against the leather seat and closed her eyes for just a moment. Dahlia and Magnolia, her daughters, her everything. The 2 reasons she had survived when survival seemed impossible. When she thought about those early days, pregnant, alone, terrified, building a business, while her body grew 2 lives, Kelly sometimes couldn't believe she had made it through. But she had, and her daughters would never know the struggle, because Kelly had made damn sure they grew up with everything. Private school, dance classes, art lessons, a beautiful home with a garden, stability, love, security. Everything Kelly had lost that night in Daniel's office, she had rebuilt bigger and better for her girls. The car pulled up to Westbridge Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the state. Kelly stepped out onto the sidewalk and immediately spotted them. Dahlia and Magnolia, identical twins with honey-brown skin, bright green eyes, and smiles that could light up the darkest room. They were wearing matching navy uniforms, but that was where the similarities ended. Dahlia had her hair in two neat braids and was carefully carrying a large piece of construction paper covered in painted flowers. She walked slowly, concentrating on not dropping her artwork. Magnolia's hair was already falling out of its ponytail, her knees were grass-stained, and she was racing toward the car at full speed, her backpack bouncing wildly. "Mama!" Magnolia shouted, launching herself into Kelly's arms with enough force to nearly knock them both over. "I scored the winning goal in soccer today. Coach said I have a natural talent, and I should try out for the travel team, and can I please, Mama? Please?" Kelly laughed and kissed her daughter's forehead. "We'll talk about it. Where's your sister?" "Being slow like always," Magnolia said, rolling her eyes dramatically. Dahlia reached them, slightly out of breath, holding up her artwork with pride. "Look, Mama, I painted flowers for you. This one is a dahlia, and this one is a magnolia. That's us." Kelly's heart clenched with love so fierce it hurt. She knelt down and took the painting carefully, studying every detail. "This is beautiful, baby. Absolutely beautiful. We're going to frame this and put it in my office." Dahlia beamed. "Really? Really? Can we get ice cream?" Magnolia asked, already moving on to the next important thing. "Please, I scored the winning goal." "You mention that a lot," Dahlia said quietly, but she was smiling. "Because it's important." Kelly ushered both girls into the car, settling between them in the back seat. As they drove toward their favorite ice cream shop, Kelly listened to Magnolia's animated retelling of the soccer game, while Dahlia quietly hummed and drew in her sketchbook. These were her daughters, these fierce, brilliant, perfect little girls who had saved her life just by existing. They didn't need Daniel Norton. They had never needed him. Later that evening, after ice cream and homework and dinner, Kelly tucked both girls into their beds. They shared a room by choice, twin beds with matching floral comforters, their walls covered in Dahlia's artwork and Magnolia's soccer ribbons. "Mama," Magnolia said as Kelly pulled the covers up to her chin, "why don't we have a daddy?" Kelly's breath caught. This question came up sometimes, usually triggered by seeing other families at school or in the park. She had prepared an answer, practiced it, but it still felt like swallowing glass. "Because we don't need one," Kelly said gently, smoothing Magnolia's wild curls. "We have each other, and that's more than enough." "But everyone else has one," Magnolia insisted. "Even the kids whose parents are divorced. They have daddies who pick them up on weekends." "We're special," Dahlia said quietly from her bed. "Right, Mama? We're special because we have you, and you're stronger than other people's mamas and daddies combined." Kelly's throat tightened with emotion. "That's right, sweet girl." "I still think it would be nice to have a daddy," Magnolia muttered, but she was already yawning. Kelly kissed both of their foreheads, turned off the light, and stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching them drift to sleep. Magnolia sprawled on her back, arms flung wide. Dahlia curled on her side, hugging her stuffed bunny. Both of them perfect, both of them hers. In her own room, later that night, Kelly stood by the window overlooking the city lights. Her house was in an exclusive neighborhood. Her business was thriving. Her daughters were healthy and happy. She had everything she had ever wanted. So why did Magnolia's question about a daddy make her chest ache? Kelly's hand moved unconsciously to her stomach, remembering. She had been so excited that night, so full of hope and joy and love. She had imagined Daniel's face when he saw the ultrasound images, imagined his hands on her belly, imagined building a family together. Instead, she had walked into his office and watched her entire world implode. Kelly turned away from the window and climbed into bed. She didn't think about Daniel Norton anymore. She refused to give him space in her head or her heart. He had made his choice 5 years ago when he chose Christy Bell over his wife and unborn children. Kelly had made her choice too. She chose to survive, to thrive, to become someone so powerful and successful that Daniel Norton would spend the rest of his life regretting what he threw away. And if Forbes was right about calling her the Phoenix, then Daniel Norton was about to learn what happened when you tried to burn down a woman who was already made of fire. She didn't just rise from the ashes, she brought the whole damn building down with her. Chapter 3. The moment time stopped. Daniel Norton was having the worst day of a very bad year. His lawyer had just informed him that Norton Enterprises was officially filing for bankruptcy. The company his father had built, that Daniel had inherited and then systematically destroyed through bad decisions and worse luck, was done, finished, over. Christie had left him 3 years ago when the money started drying up. She had married some tech billionaire in Silicon Valley and sent Daniel a wedding invitation. He had thrown it in the trash and then spent 2 hours staring at the wall of his tiny apartment, wondering how his life had fallen apart so completely. The answer, of course, was Kelly. Not that Kelly had done anything wrong. God, no. Kelly had simply taken what was hers and built something extraordinary. Hammond and Associates had swooped in like a bird of prey and picked off every major client Norton Enterprises had. Daniel couldn't even be angry about it. Kelly was brilliant. She always had been. He had just been too stupid to appreciate it when it mattered. Now Daniel was 35 years old, broke, and driving a used sedan that made concerning noises whenever he turned left. He had a meeting across town with a potential consulting client, the only work he could get these days, and he was late because, of course, he was stuck in traffic. The rain started as he reached downtown, fat drops splattering against the windshield. Daniel flipped on the wipers and inched forward through the congestion, his mind already running through the pitch he would give to the client. He needed this job, needed the money, needed something to go right. The traffic light ahead turned red, and Daniel stopped behind a line of cars. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, watching pedestrians hurry across the street with umbrellas and newspapers held over their heads. Then he saw her. Kelly Hammond, walking across the crosswalk with 2 little girls. Daniel's heart stopped beating. Just completely stopped, and for a moment he wondered if he was having a heart attack. The woman was unmistakably Kelly. Same confident stride, same elegant posture, same beautiful face, though somehow even more striking than he remembered. She was wearing a camel-colored coat and holding the hands of 2 identical little girls in bright yellow raincoats. The girls were laughing about something, their faces tilted up toward Kelly, and even from this distance, even through the rain-streaked windshield, Daniel could see it. They had his eyes, his exact green eyes, the unusual shade that ran in his family, that his mother had, that Daniel saw every morning in the mirror. Those 2 little girls walking across the street with Kelly Hammond had Daniel Norton's eyes. The world tilted sideways. Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. His breathing came in short, sharp gasps that fogged up the windshield. The math started running through his head automatically, and for once in his life, Daniel desperately wanted the math to be wrong. But it wasn't wrong. 5 years. Those girls looked about 5 years old, small but not babies. Old enough to walk confidently, to talk, to laugh. 5 years ago, Kelly had walked into his office and caught him with Christie. 5 years ago, Kelly had placed her wedding ring on his desk and disappeared from his life like smoke. 5 years ago, Kelly had been pregnant. "Oh, God," Daniel whispered. "Oh, my God." Kelly had been coming to tell him. That's what she had said in the elevator, her last words to him before she vanished forever. "I was coming to tell you something tonight, but you'll never know what it was." She had been pregnant with his children, with twins, and Daniel had been too busy fucking his assistant to notice his wife standing in the doorway, too selfish to see the most important moment of his life slipping away. The car behind him honked. The light had turned green. Daniel didn't move. He couldn't move. He was watching Kelly and the two girls reach the other side of the street. Kelly said something that made both girls giggle, and then she knelt down to fix one of their hoods. The tenderness in the gesture, the obvious love between them, hit Daniel like a physical blow. He had daughters, 2 daughters, and they had no idea he existed. More honking. Someone yelled out their window. Daniel's foot found the gas pedal and he jerked forward, nearly rear-ending the car in front of him. He pulled over at the first available space, which happened to be in front of a fire hydrant, and sat there with the engine running and his hands shaking. His daughters, Kelly's daughters, their daughters. Daniel's vision blurred with tears. He gripped the steering wheel and tried to breathe through the crushing weight on his chest. Kelly had been pregnant when she walked into his office that night. She had been carrying his children, probably terrified and excited and hopeful, and Daniel had destroyed everything in the most spectacular way possible. She had gone through pregnancy alone, given birth alone, raised 2 babies alone, built a business empire alone, while Daniel was falling apart and blaming everyone but himself for his failures. Kelly had done all of that without him, and the worst part, the part that made Daniel want to drive his car into a wall, was that she had done it better alone than they ever could have done together. Daniel fumbled for his phone and pulled up Google. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely type. He searched Kelly Hammond children, and the results flooded his screen. There were articles about her business success, features about her rise in the marketing world, interviews where she discussed work-life balance as a single mother. Single mother. The words felt like knives. There were photos too. Kelly at charity events with her daughters, Kelly speaking at conferences, Kelly accepting awards while 2 little girls in fancy dresses stood beside her, beaming with pride. Daniel zoomed in on one of the photos. The girls were wearing matching red dresses, their hair in elaborate braids, their smiles wide and genuine. The caption read, "Kelly Hammond, CEO of Hammond & Associates, with daughters Dahlia and Magnolia at the annual Business Excellence Awards." Dahlia and Magnolia. Daniel pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and sobbed. Great, gasping sobs that shook his entire body. He cried for the life he had thrown away, for the family he never knew he had, for the 5 years he could never get back. He cried for Kelly, who had been strong enough to survive his betrayal and build something beautiful from the ruins. He cried for Dahlia and Magnolia, who grew up without a father because their father was a selfish bastard who couldn't keep his pants on. A police officer knocked on the window. Daniel looked up, tears streaming down his face, and saw the officer pointing at the fire hydrant. Right. He was illegally parked. Of course he was. Daniel wiped his face with his sleeve and drove away. He missed the meeting with the potential client, forgot about it completely. Instead, he drove aimlessly through the city, his mind replaying that moment at the crosswalk over and over again. Kelly holding hands with their daughters. Kelly, who had taken everything Daniel destroyed and made it beautiful. Kelly, who had moved on and built a life so far beyond Daniel's reach that he might as well be standing on a different planet. Daniel eventually pulled into the parking lot of a cheap diner and sat in the car until it got dark. Then he went inside, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and stared at the photos on his phone. Dahlia and Magnolia, his daughters. They had his eyes, but Kelly's smile. They looked happy, healthy, loved. They looked like they had everything they needed. And Daniel wasn't part of that equation. He never had been. He had lost that right 5 years ago when he made the worst decision of his life. But maybe there was a way to fix this. Maybe if Daniel could prove he had changed, if he could show Kelly he wasn't that selfish bastard anymore, if he could become someone worthy of being in their lives, maybe Kelly would give him a chance, just one chance to know his daughters, to be their father. It was a long shot, probably impossible. Kelly had every reason to hate him and no reason to let him anywhere near those girls, but Daniel had to try. He had already lost everything else. He couldn't lose this too, not without fighting for it. Daniel paid for his coffee and walked back to his car. His phone buzzed with angry messages from the client whose meeting he had missed. Daniel deleted them without reading. None of that mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was Kelly and Dahlia and Magnolia, the family Daniel had destroyed before it ever had a chance to begin. And somehow, someway, Daniel was going to find a way to fix what he broke, even if it took the rest of his life. Even if Kelly never forgave him, he had to try. He owed them that much. Chapter 4. The Investigation. Daniel Norton became a man obsessed, but not in the way the word usually implied. He didn't stalk Kelly, didn't show up at her house uninvited, or follow her around the city like some unhinged stalker from a bad movie. What he did instead was research. Careful, methodical, desperate research into the lives of the family he had lost. He hired a private investigator, one of the few luxuries he allowed himself with his rapidly dwindling savings. The investigator was a middle-aged woman named Rita, with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense. "I need to know about my daughters," Daniel told her at their first meeting in a coffee shop downtown. "Their schedules, their school, their interests, everything." Rita raised an eyebrow. "You have custody?" "No." "Visitation rights?" "No." "Does the mother know you're looking into this?" Daniel's throat tightened. "No." Rita studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "This is going to cost you. And if you do anything illegal with this information, I'll deny ever working with you." "I'm not going to do anything illegal. I just want to know my daughters. I just want to understand who they are." "Then you should talk to their mother. She won't talk to me." "Can't imagine why," Rita said dryly, but she took the case. 2 weeks later, Daniel sat in Rita's small office while she presented him with a folder thick with information. Photos, school records, social media mentions, everything she had been able to dig up about Dahlia and Magnolia Hammond. "They attend Westbridge Academy," Rita began, flipping through pages. "Very exclusive, very expensive. Top marks in all subjects. Dahlia Hammond excels in art classes, particularly painting and drawing. She's been entered into several youth art competitions and won most of them. Teachers describe her as thoughtful, creative and sensitive. She's also in the school choir." Daniel listened with his heart in his throat, memorizing every detail. "Magnolia Hammond is the athlete, soccer team captain, despite being one of the youngest kids on the team. She's competitive, outspoken, and extremely protective of her sister. There was an incident last year where she punched another student who made fun of Dahlia's artwork, got suspended for 3 days. Daniel couldn't help the small, painful smile. His daughter was a fighter, like Kelly. "They're very close," Rita continued. "Twin bond, obviously, but more than that. They look out for each other, compensate for each other's weaknesses. Dahlia is shy, so Magnolia speaks up for her. Magnolia is impulsive, so Dahlia calms her down." "What about Kelly?" Daniel asked quietly. "How is she with them?" Rita's expression softened slightly. "From everything I observed, she's an excellent mother. Attentive, affectionate, present. She makes time for school events despite her business schedule. The girls clearly adore her. They don't have any other family involved. Kelly's parents passed away years ago, and she's an only child. It's just the 3 of them." Just the 3 of them. Because Daniel had made sure there was no room for him. Over the following weeks, Daniel took the information Rita provided and started observing from a distance. He went to Westbridge Academy at dismissal time and watched from his parked car as Kelly picked up the girls. He went to Magnolia's soccer games and sat in the back row of the bleachers, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, watching his daughter sprint across the field with fierce determination. He went to an art show at a local gallery where Dahlia's painting had been selected for display. Daniel stood in front of the painting, a beautiful watercolor of two flowers growing side by side, and read the small placard beside it. Dahlia Hammond, age 5, sisters. 5 years old. They had just turned 5. Daniel did the math again, even though he had done it 1,000 times already. Kelly would have been about 6 weeks pregnant when she caught him with Christy, early enough that she might not have known yet, or maybe she had just found out. Maybe that's why she had come to his office that night. The thought made Daniel physically ill every single time. He started keeping a journal, writing down everything he learned about his daughters. Dahlia loved butterflies and had posters of different species on her bedroom wall. Daniel knew this because Rita had somehow obtained photos of their room. Magnolia wanted to be a professional soccer player when she grew up and practiced dribbling in the backyard every evening after homework. They both loved to read, curled up together on the couch while Kelly worked in her home office. They took piano lessons on Tuesday afternoons. They had a dog named Biscuit, who was some kind of terrier mix and absolutely adored the girls, sleeping in their room every night. Daniel learned that Kelly read to them every night before bed, that she made elaborate pancakes shaped like animals on Saturday mornings, that she had never once badmouthed him to the girls, because how could she badmouth someone they didn't even know existed? The more Daniel learned, the more he realized how completely Kelly had shut him out. He didn't exist in their world. He was less than a memory. He was nothing, and it was exactly what he deserved. Daniel started volunteering at a children's hospital in his spare time. He couldn't explain exactly why, maybe because he wanted to be near kids, to understand them better, to become someone who could be trusted around children. He read to the patients, played board games with them, listened to their stories. It felt like penance. Like maybe if he could be kind to these children, it would somehow balance out the cosmic scales of all the ways he had failed his own daughters. One afternoon, Daniel was reading to a little girl who was recovering from surgery when a nurse stopped by the room. She watched him for a moment, then smiled. "You're really good with kids," she said. "Do you have any of your own?" Daniel's throat closed up. He looked at the little girl in the bed, who was waiting patiently for him to continue the story, and then back at the nurse. "Yes," he said quietly, "I have 2 daughters. Twins." It was the first time he had said it out loud. The first time he had claimed them, even though they had no idea he existed. "Lucky girls," the nurse said, and walked away. Daniel finished reading the story, said goodbye to his young patient, and walked out of the hospital into the parking lot. Then he sat in his car and cried until his chest ached and his throat was raw. Lucky girls? No, they weren't lucky. They were strong and brilliant and beautiful despite him, not because of him. That evening, Daniel wrote Kelly a letter. He poured everything into it, his regret, his shame, his desperate desire to know his daughters, his promise to be better, to do better, to prove he had changed. He wrote about seeing them at the crosswalk, about learning their names, about how Dahlia loved butterflies and Magnolia played soccer. He wrote about how he understood if Kelly never forgave him, but please, please just let him meet them once. Daniel mailed the letter to Kelly's office address. 3 days later it came back, returned to sender, unopened. There was a sticky note attached in handwriting Daniel didn't recognize. "Ms. Hammond does not accept correspondence from Daniel Norton." Daniel held the returned letter and felt something inside him break all over again. Of course Kelly wouldn't read it. Why would she? He had done nothing to earn even 5 minutes of her time. So Daniel decided he needed to try something else. He couldn't write to Kelly, couldn't call her, couldn't approach her directly. But maybe, just maybe, if he could show her through his actions that he had changed, if he could become someone worthy of being in their lives, she might consider letting him try. It was a desperate plan, probably doomed to fail. But Daniel had already lost everything. What else could they take from him? He sold his mother's jewelry, the last valuable things he owned, and set up a trust fund for Dahlia and Magnolia, not to buy their love, but because it was the right thing to do. Because they were his daughters, and they deserved whatever he could give them, even if they never knew it came from him. He started working harder on his consulting business, taking any job no matter how small, saving every penny. If he was going to fight for his family, he needed to be stable, needed to be someone Kelly might actually trust. And every evening, Daniel drove past Kelly's house, not stopping, never stopping, just driving past, and looked at the lit windows where his daughters lived, where Dahlia was probably drawing, and Magnolia was probably practicing soccer moves, and Kelly was probably tucking them in and reading bedtime stories and being everything Daniel had failed to be. "I'm going to fix this," Daniel whispered to himself as he drove away. "I don't know how, but I'm going to find a way to fix this." Even if it took the rest of his life, even if Kelly never forgave him, he had to try. Those two little girls with his green eyes and Kelly's brilliant smile deserved a father who would fight for them, and Daniel was finally ready to be that man, even if he was 5 years too late. Chapter 5. The First Approach. The annual Business Excellence Awards was the kind of event Daniel Norton used to attend as an honored guest. This year, he had to buy a ticket with money he couldn't really afford to spend, and he sat at a table in the back of the ballroom with people he didn't know, wearing a suit that was slightly too large because he had lost weight over the past months of stress and worry. But he was here because Kelly was receiving an award, and Kelly would have Dahlia and Magnolia with her. Daniel had seen the photos from previous years. Kelly always brought her daughters to important events, dressed in beautiful dresses, looking so proud of their mother. His hands shook as he watched the stage. The host was introducing Kelly now, listing her accomplishments, talking about how she had built Hammond and Associates from nothing into one of the most successful marketing firms in the country. The audience applauded enthusiastically as Kelly walked onto the stage. She was breathtaking. Kelly wore a floor-length emerald gown that made her dark skin glow, her natural hair styled in an elaborate updo. She commanded the stage with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she was worth. When she smiled at the audience, Daniel felt his heart shatter all over again. And there, in the front row, were Dahlia and Magnolia. They were wearing matching navy blue dresses with sparkles on the skirts, their hair in elaborate braids with ribbons woven through. They were clapping wildly for their mother, bouncing in their seats with excitement. Daniel couldn't breathe. His daughters were right there, right there. He could see the exact green shade of their eyes even from this distance, could see how Magnolia was more animated, tugging on the arm of the woman sitting next to them and pointing at Kelly on stage. Could see how Dahlia sat very still, watching her mother with quiet pride. Kelly accepted the award and gave a speech that was eloquent and funny and gracious. She thanked her team, her clients, and then she paused and looked directly at the front row. "Most importantly," Kelly said, her voice softening, "I want to thank my daughters, Dahlia and Magnolia. Everything I do for you. You are my purpose, my motivation, and my greatest joy. Thank you for being patient when Mama has to work late, for understanding when I'm stressed, and for reminding me every single day what really matters. I love you both more than words can express." The audience made appreciative sounds. Dahlia and Magnolia were glowing, waving at their mother. Kelly blew them a kiss and left the stage to thunderous applause. Daniel waited. The evening continued with dinner and more speeches and networking. He watched Kelly circulate through the room, her daughters staying close to her side. People stopped her constantly to offer congratulations, to request meetings, to introduce themselves. Kelly handled it all with grace, but Daniel noticed how she kept one hand on Magnolia's shoulder and how Dahlia held tight to her mother's other hand, protective. Kelly was being protective. Did she know he was here? Had she seen him? As the evening wound down and people started leaving, Daniel made his move. His legs felt like they might give out as he crossed the ballroom, weaving between tables, his eyes locked on Kelly as she said goodbye to a colleague. "Kelly." She turned at the sound of his voice, and Daniel watched her face transform. First confusion, then recognition, then something cold and hard that made his stomach drop. "Daniel." Kelly's voice could have frozen fire. "What are you doing here? I needed to see you, to talk to you. Please, Kelly, just 5 minutes." "No." "Kelly," I said no. Kelly turned away from him, her hand tightening on Magnolia's shoulder. But Magnolia, being Magnolia, wasn't going to be quiet. "Who's that, Mama?" she asked, staring at Daniel with open curiosity. "No one, baby. Let's go." "But Mama—" "Now, Magnolia." Daniel took a step forward, his desperation overriding his common sense. "Kelly, please, those girls, they're—" Kelly spun on him with such fury that Daniel actually stepped back. Her eyes were blazing, her jaw tight, and when she spoke, her voice was low and dangerous. Don't you dare finish that sentence." "I know," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "I know they're mine, Kelly. I saw you at the crosswalk, and I've been trying to find a way to talk to you, to explain." "There's nothing to explain. You made your choice 5 years ago." "I didn't know." "You didn't care." Kelly's voice rose slightly, and several people nearby turned to look. She took a breath, visibly controlling herself. "Girls, go wait with Jennifer by the coat check, now." Dahlia and Magnolia hesitated, clearly sensing the tension, but they obeyed. Daniel watched them walk away, his daughters walking away from him, and felt something break inside his chest. When the girls were out of earshot, Kelly turned back to him with ice in her eyes. "You have 5 seconds to walk away before I have security remove you." "Kelly, I made a mistake. The worst mistake of my life. I've spent 5 years trying to—" "5 years?" Kelly laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've spent 5 years doing what exactly? Building yourself back up, feeling sorry for yourself. Well, guess what, Daniel? I spent 5 years pregnant and alone. I spent 5 years raising 2 babies by myself while building a business and healing from what you did to me. Your 5 years don't mean shit compared to mine. I know that. I know I don't deserve—" "You're right. You don't deserve anything. Not my time, not my forgiveness, and certainly not my daughters." "Our daughters," Daniel said quietly, and Kelly's eyes flashed with rage. "My daughters. Mine. I carried them. I birthed them. I raised them. You were too busy screwing your assistant to even know they existed. They are not yours, Daniel. They will never be yours. I want to make this right." "You can't make this right. There is no right. There's just them and me, and we're doing just fine without you." Daniel felt tears burning behind his eyes. "Please, Kelly. I'll do anything, anything. Just let me know them. Let me be their father." "You want to know them?" Kelly stepped closer, and Daniel could see the pain beneath her anger, could see the scars he had left on her. "You want to know that Dahlia cries sometimes because she draws pictures of families and ours doesn't look like everyone else's. You want to know that Magnolia asks me every few months why they don't have a daddy, and I have to figure out how to answer without telling them their father chose a quick fuck over their existence? Kelly, you want to know how many times I stood in their nursery when they were babies, so exhausted I couldn't see straight, and wondered if I could do this alone? How many times I questioned whether I was enough? Whether they would grow up resenting me for keeping them from you? Why did you keep them from me? Daniel asked desperately. Why didn't you tell me? Kelly stared at him like he was an idiot. Because you didn't deserve to know. Because I saw who you really were that night in your office. Because I knew that if I told you, you would either reject them or try to take them from me, and I wasn't going to let either of those things happen. So I made a choice. I chose them. I chose me, and we've been better off without you. I'm not that person anymore. I don't care who you are now. You could be a saint, and it wouldn't change what you did. It wouldn't give me back those 5 years of struggling alone. It wouldn't erase the fact that my daughters grew up without a father because their father was a selfish bastard. Daniel felt something wet on his face and realized he was crying. I'm sorry. God, Kelly, I'm so sorry. Your apologies mean nothing to me. Then what do I do? Tell me what to do. Kelly looked at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw the battle playing out on her face. Anger and pain and something else. Something that might have been exhaustion. You leave us alone, she said finally. You stay away from my daughters. You stay away from me. You go back to whatever life you've built, and you forget we exist. I can't do that. Then you're going to suffer, Kelly said simply, because I will not let you anywhere near them. I will fight you with everything I have. I will destroy you before I let you hurt them the way you hurt me. She turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Daniel watched her collect Dahlia and Magnolia, watched her hug them both and wipe what looked like tears from Dahlia's concerned face, watched them leave the ballroom together. A family, complete, without him. Daniel stood there until a member of the event staff politely asked him to leave. Then he walked to his car, got inside, and screamed until his throat was raw. He pounded his fists against the steering wheel until his hands hurt. And then he sat there, in the dark parking lot, and cried until he had nothing left. Kelly was right. He didn't deserve them. He had never deserved them. But that didn't change the fact that he loved them desperately, hopelessly, even though they didn't know he existed. Didn't change the fact that he would spend the rest of his life trying to be worthy of them, even if Kelly never forgave him, even if his daughters grew up never knowing his name. Daniel was going to prove he had changed. He was going to become the man Kelly deserved 5 years ago, the father Dahlia and Magnolia should have had from the beginning. It was too late to fix what he broke, but maybe, just maybe, if he tried hard enough, suffered long enough, changed deeply enough, maybe Kelly would give him one chance, just one chance to be part of their lives. And if she didn't, if she kept them from him forever, Daniel would accept that. Because Kelly Hammond was right about everything. She always had been. Chapter 6. The suffering. The trust fund came back shredded. Daniel had used the last of his savings to create a proper legal trust for Dahlia and Magnolia, not the pathetic amount from selling his mother's jewelry, but actual money he had scraped together through consulting work, through selling everything he owned, through working himself to exhaustion. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, but it was everything he had. Kelly's lawyer sent it back in pieces, stuffed into a manila envelope with a note card on top. Daniel recognized Kelly's handwriting immediately. My daughters don't need your guilt money. They don't need anything from you. Stop. Daniel sat on the floor of his studio apartment, surrounded by shredded legal documents, and tried not to let it destroy him. But God, it was hard. He was trying. He was trying so hard, and Kelly wouldn't even acknowledge it. He had started sending flowers to her office. Not love letters, nothing romantic, just flowers with simple cards. For Dahlia's art show. For Magnolia's soccer game. Because you're an incredible mother. Every single bouquet came back, sometimes within hours. Kelly had them donated to hospitals, and she made sure the donation cards read, "From a man who doesn't understand the meaning of no." The rejection was systematic and brutal. Daniel tried writing letters directly to Dahlia and Magnolia, carefully worded letters that didn't explain who he was, just told them how proud he was of their accomplishments, how beautiful Dahlia's artwork was, how impressive Magnolia's athletic skills were, how lucky they were to have a mother like Kelly. He mailed them to Kelly's home address. They came back unopened, returned to sender. He tried showing up at Kelly's office building. Security had his photo and escorted him off the property before he could even get through the lobby. He tried approaching Kelly at charity events. She had him removed before he could speak. Daniel's desperation became public. Former colleagues whispered about him at industry events. Did you hear about Daniel Norton, completely obsessed with his ex-wife? It's pathetic. The rumors spread. People who had once respected him now looked at him with pity or contempt. Daniel didn't care. His reputation was already destroyed. What did it matter if people thought he was pathetic? He was pathetic. He had thrown away everything that mattered, and now he was paying the price. His consulting business barely survived. Clients cancelled contracts, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. Daniel took whatever work he could get. Small projects, freelance gigs, anything to keep money coming in. Not for himself, for Dahlia and Magnolia. In case Kelly ever changed her mind about the trust fund, in case he ever got a chance to give them something, anything. Daniel started volunteering more at the children's hospital. It was the only place he felt useful, the only place where his presence made a positive difference in someone's life. He read stories to sick kids, played games with them, listened to them talk about their fears and hopes. One evening, a little girl named Sophie asked him if he had kids. Daniel hesitated, then pulled out his phone. He had saved dozens of photos from Kelly's social media before she blocked him completely. Photos of Dahlia and Magnolia at school events, at soccer games, at art shows. His daughters, who didn't know he existed. "Yes," Daniel said, showing Sophie the photos. "These are my daughters, Dahlia and Magnolia." Sophie studied the pictures seriously. "They're pretty. Do they visit you here?" "No, they don't know I volunteer here." "Why not?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Because I made some very bad choices before they were born, and their mother doesn't trust me. She's protecting them, which is exactly what a good mother should do." "Do you miss them?" "Every single day." "You should tell them," Sophie said with the brutal honesty only children possess. "My daddy told me he missed me when I was in the hospital, and it made me feel better." Daniel smiled sadly. "That's good advice, sweetheart, but sometimes things are more complicated than that." That night, Daniel wrote in his journal. It had become a nightly ritual, writing letters to daughters who would never read them, documenting their lives from a distance, recording all the moments he missed, all the milestones he would never witness. "Dear Dahlia and Magnolia," he wrote, "today I saw photos from your school's art exhibition. Dahlia, your butterfly series is stunning. The detail in the wings, the way you captured light, you have real talent. And Magnolia, I heard you scored 3 goals in your soccer game. Your coach posted about it, called you a natural athlete. I'm so proud of both of you, even though I have no right to that pride. I wonder what you're doing right now. Probably sleeping. It's late. I wonder if your mum reads to you before bed. I bet she does. She always loved books. I wonder if you dream. I wonder if you're happy. I hope you are. I hope you stay that way, even if it means I'm never part of your lives. All my love, your father." Daniel closed the journal and stared at the ceiling of his apartment. He was so tired, bone-deep exhausted from carrying this weight, from knowing his daughters existed and not being able to be part of their lives, from watching Kelly succeed and thrive while he disintegrated. But he couldn't stop, wouldn't stop, because stopping meant giving up, and giving up meant accepting that he would never know his daughters. Daniel wasn't ready to accept that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. His phone buzzed. A text from Rita, the private investigator. She sent him updates sometimes, even though he could barely afford to keep her on retainer. FYI, Kelly Hammond was named CEO of the Year by Business magazine. There's going to be a ceremony next month. Daniel stared at the message. CEO of the Year. Of course she was. Kelly Hammond was unstoppable. She had taken everything Daniel destroyed and built an empire from it. She had raised 2 children alone while conquering the business world. She had survived his betrayal and come out stronger. Meanwhile, Daniel was living in a studio apartment, working odd jobs, and being escorted out of buildings by security guards. The contrast was devastating, but it also clarified something for Daniel. He wasn't trying to get Kelly back. That ship had sailed 5 years ago and burned on the way out of the harbor. He was trying to be worthy of knowing his daughters, and right now, he wasn't worthy. Not even close. So Daniel made a decision. He was going to stop the grand gestures that Kelly clearly hated, stop the flowers and letters and attempts to approach her. He was going to focus on becoming someone better, someone who could look his daughters in the eye someday and not feel crushing shame. He enrolled in therapy, started working through his issues with a counselor who didn't judge him but didn't let him off easy either. He volunteered more, not just at the hospital, but at youth programs, coaching kids soccer on weekends, teaching basic business skills at a community center. He worked harder on his consulting business, taking it seriously instead of treating it as a temporary solution. He became deliberate about his transformation instead of desperate about his redemption. Months passed. Daniel didn't contact Kelly, didn't send flowers or letters, didn't try to approach her at events. He worked on himself in silence, hoping that somehow, someday, Kelly would see that he had changed. Really, truly changed. Not because he wanted something from her, but because it was the right thing to do. And then, on an ordinary afternoon that would become extraordinary, Daniel got a call that changed everything. "Mr. Norton?" The voice on the phone was professional, female, unfamiliar. "This is Westbridge Academy. There's been an accident involving one of our students. You're listed as an emergency contact for Magnolia Hammond." Daniel's blood turned to ice. "What happened? Is she okay?" "There was an incident with a car in front of the school. Magnolia was struck. She's being transported to City General Hospital now. We've been trying to reach Ms. Hammond, but she's not answering her phone." "I'm on my way," Daniel said, already grabbing his keys. He didn't question why he was listed as an emergency contact, didn't wonder how that had happened, didn't care about anything except getting to his daughter who was hurt, his daughter who needed him, his daughter who still didn't know he existed. Daniel broke every speed limit getting to City General Hospital, and when he arrived, his entire world was about to shift again. Chapter 7. The accident that changed everything. Daniel burst through the emergency room doors like a man possessed. "Magnolia Hammond," he gasped to the nurse at the intake desk. "A girl from Westbridge Academy. Car accident. Where is she?" The nurse checked her computer with infuriating slowness. "She's in examination room 4. Are you family?" "I'm her father." The words felt strange on his tongue. True, but strange. The nurse gave him a visitor badge and directions, and Daniel ran down the corridor, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode from his chest. Examination room 4. He pushed open the door and stopped dead. Magnolia was lying on the hospital bed, her leg in a temporary splint, her face scraped and bruised. But she was conscious, talking to a doctor, and when she saw Daniel, her eyes went wide. "You're the man from the awards," she said, her voice shaky but curious. "Mama's friend." Daniel's throat closed up. "Hi, sweetheart. My name is Daniel. I'm going to stay with you until your mama gets here, okay?" "Okay," Magnolia whispered. Then her face crumpled. "It hurts. My leg really hurts." Daniel moved to her side without thinking, taking her small hand in his. "I know, baby. I know. But these doctors are going to fix you up. You're going to be okay." "Where's Mama?" "She's on her way. She's coming as fast as she can." The doctor explained what had happened. Magnolia had been chasing a soccer ball that rolled into the street. A car had been coming around the corner too fast. The impact had broken her leg and given her a concussion, but she would be okay. She needed surgery to set the bone properly, but the prognosis was good. Daniel listened while holding his daughter's hand, and it took everything in him not to fall apart completely. This was Magnolia, his daughter, and she was hurt and scared, and he was here, actually here, touching her for the first time in her life. "Are you really my mama's friend?" Magnolia asked, studying his face. I used to be, Daniel said carefully. A long time ago. Why did you stop being friends? Because I made some mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that hurt people you love. The worst kind. Magnolia processed this with the brutal honesty of a child. Did you say sorry? Many times. Did she forgive you? Daniel's eyes burned with tears. No, sweetheart. She didn't. That's sad, Magnolia said. Then she squeezed his hand. You have nice eyes. They're like mine and Leah's. Daniel couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. He just held his daughter's hand and tried not to sob. The surgery was scheduled for within the hour. Daniel stayed with Magnolia the entire time, talking to her about soccer and school and her favorite foods, anything to distract her from the pain and fear. She told him about how she wanted to play professional soccer someday, how her coach said she was the best player on the team, how Dahlia thought soccer was boring but came to all her games anyway because that's what sisters do. Leah's the best sister, Magnolia said groggily. The pain medication was making her drowsy. She's quiet, but she's really smart, and she draws me pictures of soccer players when I'm sad. She sounds wonderful, Daniel managed to say. She is. We're twins. That means we came out of Mama's belly together. I know. Do you have any kids? Daniel looked at his daughter, at her green eyes that matched his, at her brave little face trying so hard not to cry, at the hand clutching his like he was a lifeline. And he couldn't lie. Yes, he whispered. I have 2 daughters. They're the most amazing girls in the world, and I love them more than anything. What are their names? Dahlia and Magnolia. Magnolia's eyes widened, then narrowed with suspicion. But before she could ask the obvious question, the door burst open and Kelly Hammond exploded into the room like a hurricane. Magnolia! Kelly rushed to the bed, her face white with terror. Baby, are you okay? Oh God, what happened? Mama! Magnolia reached for Kelly with her free hand, the one not holding Daniel's. I got hit by a car chasing my soccer ball, but this nice man stayed with me, and the doctors say I'm going to be okay. Kelly finally seemed to notice Daniel standing there. Her eyes met his, and the look she gave him could have melted steel. What are you doing here? The school called me, Daniel said quietly. They said I was an emergency contact. I didn't question it. I just came. You had no right. Mama, don't be mean, Magnolia interrupted, her voice wavering. He stayed with me. I was so scared, and he held my hand and told me it would be okay. Kelly's expression cracked. She looked at her daughter, then back at Daniel, and something shifted. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, but maybe, just maybe, a hairline fracture in the armor she had built around her heart. Thank you, Kelly said stiffly, but I'm here now. You can leave. Actually, Ms. Hammond, the doctor interrupted, Magnolia is scheduled for surgery in about 30 minutes. We need you to sign consent forms, and we'd like to review everything with you. If Mr. Norton has been keeping her calm, it might be beneficial to let him stay until she's in the operating room. Children do better with familiar faces. Kelly looked like she wanted to argue, but Magnolia's hand was still clutching Daniel's, and her daughter's face was starting to show signs of real fear as the reality of surgery sank in. Fine, Kelly said through gritted teeth. But we need to talk. In the hallway. Now. Daniel followed Kelly out of the room, and the moment the door closed behind them, she rounded on him. How are you listed as an emergency contact? I never put your name anywhere. I don't know. I swear, Kelly, I had no idea until they called me. This is insane. You can't just... You're not part of their lives. I know that, but they called me, and our daughter was hurt, and I came. What was I supposed to do? Our daughter? Kelly's voice rose. You don't get to call her that. You don't get to... She broke off, her hand shaking. Daniel could see her fighting for control, and then suddenly Kelly's legs seemed to give out. She leaned against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the floor, and put her head in her hands. "I was in a meeting," she said, her voice muffled. "My phone was off. I didn't see the calls, didn't know she was hurt. What kind of mother doesn't answer when her child is hurt?" Daniel sat down beside her, careful to keep some distance. The kind who was working to provide for her children. The kind who can't be everywhere at once because she's doing the work of two parents. "You're a good mother, Kelly. The best." "She could have died," Kelly whispered. "She could have died and I wasn't there. But she didn't. She's going to be okay. And you're here now." They sat in silence for a moment, the fluorescent hospital lights humming above them. Then Kelly spoke without looking at him. "Why did you come?" "Because she's my daughter, and she needed me." "You don't know her." "I know she's brave and stubborn and loves soccer more than anything. I know she has your fire and strength. I know she's incredible, just like her sister." Kelly finally looked at him, and Daniel saw tears on her face. Real tears. "You don't deserve to know them." "I know. You threw us away." "I know. I should have security drag you out of this hospital." "You should." "So why can't I?" Kelly's voice broke. "Why can't I just make you disappear like you deserve?" "Because you're exhausted," Daniel said gently. "Because you've been doing this alone for too long. Because even though you hate me, and you should hate me, you're terrified right now, and I'm here. You don't have to face this alone." Kelly put her head back in her hands and cried, real broken sobs that shook her entire body, and Daniel sat beside her, not touching her, not offering platitudes, just being there while she fell apart. When she finally stopped crying, Kelly wiped her face with her hands and stood up. "I need to sign those forms, and I need to call my assistant to pick up Dahlia from school. She's going to be terrified when she finds out what happened." "I can help with that," Daniel offered carefully. "I can stay with Magnolia while you handle things. Or I can pick up Dahlia, whatever you need." "You're not picking up my daughter." "Then let me stay with Magnolia." Kelly hesitated, clearly torn. Then she looked through the small window in the door at Magnolia, who was staring at the ceiling with wide, scared eyes. "Fine," Kelly said, "but this doesn't change anything between us. I know, and after today, you stay away, if that's what you want." Kelly walked back into the room, and Daniel followed. They stayed with Magnolia together as the surgical team prepped her, Kelly holding one hand and Daniel holding the other. When they wheeled her away, Magnolia looked back at both of them. "Don't leave, okay?" she called out. "Either of you." "We won't, baby," Kelly promised. "We'll be right here when you wake up." And they were. Kelly and Daniel sat in the surgical waiting room together, not talking, barely acknowledging each other's presence. But they were there, together, waiting for news about their daughter. When the surgeon finally emerged and said the surgery had gone perfectly, Kelly burst into tears again. This time, without thinking, Daniel put his arm around her shoulders, and Kelly, exhausted and overwhelmed and relieved, let him, just for a moment, just until she remembered who he was, and pulled away. But that moment was enough to show Daniel that maybe, just maybe, Kelly wasn't entirely made of ice where he was concerned, that somewhere underneath all that rage and pain, there might still be a tiny crack where he could prove himself. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even close to forgiveness. But it was something. And for Daniel Norton, after 5 years of nothing, something felt like everything. Chapter 8. The confession that destroys Kelly Hammond established rules immediately. Daniel could visit Magnolia once a week, only once, only for 1 hour, only at Kelly's house where she could supervise every single moment, and he couldn't tell the girls who he was. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That decision belonged to Kelly alone. Daniel agreed to everything. He would have agreed to anything. The first visit was awkward and painful and beautiful all at once. Magnolia's leg was in a cast, covered in signatures from her friends and teammates. She was propped up on the couch with pillows, watching television, when Daniel arrived. "The nice man from the hospital," she exclaimed, her face lighting up. "Hi, sweetheart. How are you feeling?" "Bored. I can't play soccer for weeks and weeks, and it's terrible." Dahlia was there too, sitting in the corner with a sketchbook, watching Daniel with solemn, cautious eyes. Kelly had introduced him as an old friend helping out, which wasn't technically a lie, but felt like swallowing glass every time Daniel heard it. "What are you drawing?" Daniel asked Dahlia gently. She held up her sketchbook. It was a beautiful watercolor of a garden, full of different flowers rendered in careful detail. "It's for Mama's office. She likes flowers." "That's stunning, Dahlia. You're incredibly talented." Dahlia studied him with those green eyes, his eyes, and said nothing. But she didn't close the sketchbook, which Daniel took as a small victory. Over the following weeks, Daniel learned his daughters, really learned them. He discovered that Magnolia could talk for hours without taking a breath, that she had strong opinions about everything from soccer tactics to what movies were best, that she was fiercely protective of Dahlia and would fight anyone who looked at her sister wrong. He learned that Dahlia was quiet but not shy. She just preferred to observe before speaking. That she noticed everything and had a memory like a steel trap. That she loved reading fantasy books and drawing imaginary creatures and asking questions that showed depths of understanding far beyond her years. They were perfect, both of them. Perfect and brilliant and funny and kind, and Daniel loved them so completely it felt like his chest might crack open from the force of it. Kelly watched his every interaction like a hawk. She sat in the same room during every visit, working on her laptop, but clearly listening to every word. Sometimes Daniel caught her watching him with an unreadable expression. Sometimes she looked sad, sometimes angry, sometimes just exhausted. Daniel never pushed, never stayed longer than the allotted hour, never tried to have side conversations with Kelly. He showed up on time, interacted with his daughters, and left when told. He was proving he could follow rules, that he could be trusted. 2 months after the accident, Kelly actually spoke to him beyond terse instructions about arrival times. "They ask about you," she said as Daniel was leaving one evening. "Between visits, they want to know when you're coming back." Daniel's heart skipped. "Is that okay?" "I don't know," Kelly said honestly. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore." "You're doing great, Kelly. You're an incredible mother." "Don't." She held up her hand. "Don't compliment me. Don't try to. Just don't." Daniel nodded and left. The moment that changed everything happened on a quiet afternoon in Kelly's living room. Daniel had just finished reading a book to both girls, a fantasy novel about twin sisters with magical powers that Dahlia had chosen. Magnolia was getting restless, her legs still in the cast, her energy pent up from weeks of being unable to play soccer. "Mr. Daniel," Magnolia said suddenly, "why do you visit us?" Daniel glanced at Kelly, who had gone very still. "Because I enjoy spending time with you." "But why?" Magnolia pressed. "Mama's other friends don't visit us. Just you." Dahlia put down her sketchbook, suddenly alert. Daniel felt sweat break out on his back. He looked at Kelly again, silently asking permission, but Kelly's face was pale and frozen. "Well," Daniel said carefully, "I think you're both really special, and I like hearing about your lives." "That's a nice answer," Dahlia said softly, "but it's not the whole truth, is it?" Daniel's blood turned cold. How did this 5-year-old see through him so clearly? "Dahlia," Kelly started, but Magnolia interrupted. "You have the same eyes as us, green like grass. Mama's eyes are brown. Why do we have your eyes?" The room went silent. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat, loud and frantic in his ears. He looked at Kelly, and she was staring at her daughters with an expression of pure panic. "Girls," Kelly said, her voice shaking, "that's enough questions for today." "But, Mama," Magnolia started, "I said that's enough." Kelly's sharp tone made both girls flinch. Daniel watched Dahlia's eyes fill with tears and Magnolia's face crumple with confusion. He made a decision in that moment. Probably the wrong decision, probably one Kelly would never forgive him for, but he couldn't lie to them anymore. "Because I'm your father," Daniel said quietly. The words fell into the room like bombs. Kelly stood up so fast she knocked over her laptop. "Daniel, don't you dare." They asked Kelly. They deserve the truth. "That's not your decision to make." "I'm your daddy," Magnolia whispered, her eyes huge. Dahlia had gone very still, her face unreadable. She looked at her mother, then at Daniel, then back at her mother. When she spoke, her voice was small and heartbroken. "Why weren't you there?" The question destroyed Daniel. He knelt down so he was at eye level with both girls, tears already streaming down his face. "Because I made the worst mistake of my life before you were born. I hurt your mother very badly, and she had to be strong for all of you, for herself, for you, for your sister. She had to do everything alone because I failed her." "What did you do?" Dahlia demanded. Her quiet facade had cracked, and underneath was pain so raw it made Daniel want to die. Kelly was crying silently, standing frozen by the couch. Daniel looked at her, but she gave the tiniest nod. Fine. If he was going to destroy everything, at least he would do it honestly. "I betrayed your mother's trust. I broke promises I made to her. I chose something temporary and meaningless over everything that mattered, and when she found out, she left. She was carrying both of you at the time, but I didn't know that. She didn't tell me, and she was right not to tell me, because I didn't deserve to know." "Why are you here now?" Dahlia asked. "Because I want to be your father, because I want to know you and be part of your lives, because I've been trying to become someone worthy of you." "Are you?" Magnolia asked. "Are you worthy?" Daniel looked at Kelly. Her face was wrecked with tears, her arms wrapped around herself. He looked back at his daughters. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm trying. Every single day I'm trying." Dahlia stood up and walked to her mother. She wrapped her small arms around Kelly's waist and looked back at Daniel with eyes that were far too old for a 5-year-old child. "Mama is the strongest person in the world," Dahlia said firmly. "She raised us by herself. She built a company by herself. She did everything without you. We don't need you." The words cut deeper than any knife could. Daniel nodded, unable to speak around the lump in his throat. "You're right. You don't need me. Your mother is the strongest person I've ever known. She's incredible, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there for any of you." Magnolia was crying now, confused and upset. She reached for Kelly too, and suddenly both girls were clinging to their mother, all three of them crying. Daniel stood there feeling like the worst person who had ever existed. "I think you should leave," Kelly said through her tears. "Kelly!" "Now, Daniel, please, just go." Daniel left. He walked out of that house and sat in his car for 20 minutes, sobbing so hard he couldn't breathe. He had just met his daughters. Actually, truly met them. Told them he was their father. And within minutes, he had watched Dahlia choose her mother with absolute certainty. "We don't need you." She was right. They didn't need him. They had Kelly, and Kelly was everything. Kelly was the one who had been there for every moment of their lives. Kelly was the one who had sacrificed and struggled and built something beautiful from the ruins of her marriage. Kelly was the one they loved with absolute certainty. Daniel was just the man who had destroyed everything before it began. His phone buzzed. A text from Kelly. "Don't come back next week. I need time to figure this out. I need to talk to them without you here. I'll contact you when I'm ready, if I'm ready." Daniel stared at the text and typed back one word. Okay. Then he drove home and spent the rest of the night writing in his journal, letters to daughters who might never want to hear from him again, apologies to a woman who would never forgive him, and questions about what came next, because for the first time in months, Daniel had no idea what to do. He had finally told his daughters the truth, and the truth had devastated all of them. Chapter 9. The Return of Christie. 3 weeks of silence felt like 3 years. Daniel existed in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions of living while his heart remained in Kelly's house with 2 little girls who now knew he was their father and weren't sure what to do with that information. He worked, he volunteered, he went to therapy, and he waited for Kelly to decide whether he deserved a second chance. Dr. Martinez asked him the hard questions during their sessions. What if Kelly decides you can't see them anymore? Daniel had thought about this, obsessed over it during sleepless nights. Then I accept it. I have no legal rights. I signed away everything when I signed those divorce papers 5 years ago. Kelly has full custody, and she's never put my name on their birth certificates. Legally, I don't exist to those girls. That must be terrifying. It's what I deserve. Is it? You made a mistake 5 years ago, a terrible mistake, but don't you deserve a chance to be a father to your children? Not if it hurts them. Kelly's right to be cautious. I destroyed her once. Why would she trust me not to do it again? The answer came not from Kelly, but from an unexpected source. Daniel was leaving his apartment on a rainy Thursday evening when he found Christie Bell sitting on the stairs outside his building. She was heavily pregnant now, maybe 7 or 8 months, her face pale and drawn, dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate worry. "Hello, Daniel," she said quietly. Every muscle in Daniel's body tensed. "What are you doing here?" "I need help, again." Christie's voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I know you already helped me once, and I have no right to ask for more, but I don't know where else to go." Daniel's first instinct was to walk away, to tell her that her problems weren't his responsibility, that she had helped destroy his life, and now she could figure out her own. But he thought about Kelly, heavily pregnant with twins, facing the world alone because Daniel had failed her. He thought about his daughters, who would grow up knowing their father had the chance to help someone and chose not to. "What happened?" Daniel asked, sitting down on the stairs beside her. "Garrett cleaned out our joint account before he left. I have nothing. I'm staying at a women's shelter, but they can only keep me for another week, and I don't have anywhere else to go. The baby's coming soon, and I don't even have a place to bring her home to." Christie was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. "I tried to get my old job back, but Norton Enterprises doesn't exist anymore, and Hammond and Associates won't touch me. My parents disowned me when they found out I was the mistress in your marriage. I have nothing, Daniel, no one." Daniel sat there in the rain, watching water drip off the edges of the building, and made a choice that would change everything. "Come with me," he said, standing up. He took Christie to a nearby diner and bought her dinner. Real food, not shelter food. He listened while she talked about her pregnancy, her fears, her regrets. And when she was done, when she had cried herself empty across the table from him, Daniel pulled out his phone. "I'm going to make some calls. I know a woman who runs a transitional housing program for pregnant women. She might have space. And there are organizations that help with baby supplies, job training, childcare assistance. It's not going to be easy, but if you're willing to work for it, you can build a life for yourself and your daughter." "Why are you helping me?" Christie whispered. "After everything I did to you, to Kelly, why?" "Because Kelly Hammond was pregnant and alone, and she survived anyway. She built something incredible from nothing because that's who she is. You're not Kelly, but your baby deserves a chance at a good life, And I'm learning that being a decent person means helping even when it's hard, even when the person doesn't deserve it. Daniel spent the next 2 hours making calls, setting up meetings, connecting Christy with resources. He didn't give her money this time. He gave her something better, a path forward, a chance to build something on her own. When he finally dropped her off at the women's shelter, Christy grabbed his hand before getting out of the car. "I'm sorry," she said, "for all of it, for being part of what happened that night, for making it easy for you to destroy your marriage. I was selfish and cruel, and I knew you were married and I didn't care. I'm sorry." "I know," Daniel said. "But you need to understand something, Christy. What happened that night was my fault, mine. You didn't force me to betray Kelly. I made that choice. I own it, and I'll spend the rest of my life paying for it. But you can choose to be better now. For your daughter. Be the mother she deserves, even if we weren't the people we should have been." Christy nodded and got out of the car. Daniel watched her walk into the shelter, and then he drove home and collapsed on his couch, emotionally exhausted. His phone rang an hour later. "Kelly, we need to talk," she said without preamble. "Can you come over? Now?" "Of course, I'm on my way." Daniel drove to Kelly's house with his heart in his throat. This was it. The moment Kelly would tell him whether he had a future with his daughters or whether the past 3 weeks had been his last chance. Kelly opened the door before he could knock. She was still in business clothes, but her hair was down and she looked tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. "They're asleep," Kelly said, leading him to the living room. "Finally. They've been asking about you every single day. When is Daniel coming back? Why can't we see him? Does he still want to be our daddy?" Daniel's throat closed up. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That we're figuring things out. That adults sometimes need time to make hard decisions. That you love them very much." Kelly sat on the couch and gestured for Daniel to sit across from her. The distance felt deliberate. "I've been thinking. A lot. About what you said. About what happened. About what I want for the girls." "Kelly, let me finish." Kelly held up her hand. "I found out something this week. About why the school called you when Magnolia was hurt. Do you want to know how you ended up as an emergency contact?" Daniel had wondered about this constantly. "Yes. I put you there. 5 years ago, right after the girls were born. I was filling out their school registration forms, and there was a line for father's information. I almost left it blank, but something in me couldn't do it. Couldn't erase you completely, so I put your name, your phone number, your information, and then I forgot about it, because I never planned on you actually being in their lives." Kelly's eyes were glistening with tears. "But some part of me, even then, couldn't let you go completely. Some stupid, hopeful part of me left the door cracked open." Daniel couldn't breathe. "Kelly, I was wrong to keep them from you completely. Not wrong to protect myself, not wrong to leave, not wrong to build my life without you, but wrong to decide for them that they would never know their father. They deserved that choice, even if I didn't think you deserved them." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you can keep visiting. Regularly. We'll establish a schedule. And we'll tell the girls officially that you're their father and that you're going to be part of their lives from now on." Kelly's voice hardened. "But Daniel, if you disappoint them even once, if you miss a single visit without a damn good reason, if you break one promise, I'm done. You're done. Do you understand?" "I understand. And I heard about Christy." Kelly's expression was unreadable. "Rita called me. She still keeps tabs on things for me. She told me you spent your evening helping your ex-mistress find housing and resources instead of just throwing money at her and walking away." Daniel's face flushed with shame. "Kelly, I didn't do it for you to find out. I did it because it was the right thing to do." "I know. That's what Rita said too." Kelly stood up and walked to the window, her back to Daniel. "You're not the same man who betrayed me 5 years ago. I can see that now. I don't want to see it, because it's easier to hate you when you're still a villain. But you're not anymore, are you?" I'm trying not to be. Kelly turned around, and Daniel saw tears streaming down her face. I spent 5 years hating you. 5 years being so angry I could barely function sometimes. And now I don't know what to do with all this rage if you're actually becoming someone decent. You don't have to let it go. You can hate me forever, Kelly. I've earned it. But please, don't punish the girls for what I did. I'm not punishing them. I'm protecting them. From what? From having a father who loves them and wants to be in their lives? From having their hearts broken when you leave again? Kelly's voice broke completely. Because people like you always leave, Daniel. You make promises and then you break them. You say you've changed and then you do the same selfish things. And I will not let you do that to Dahlia and Magnolia. I won't let you break them the way you broke me. Daniel stood up and walked toward her slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. I'm not leaving, not ever. I don't care if you never forgive me. I don't care if you hate me for the rest of your life. I'm going to show up for those girls every single time. I'm going to be the father they deserve, even if it kills me. Because they're everything, Kelly. Everything. Kelly looked at him with such raw pain that Daniel wanted to take it all away, to absorb every bit of hurt he had caused and carry it himself. You destroyed me. Do you understand that? That night in your office, you didn't just end our marriage. You ended the person I was. The Kelly who trusted people, who believed in love, who thought happy endings were possible. You killed her. I know, Daniel whispered, and I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't give me back those 5 years. Sorry doesn't make what you did okay. No, it doesn't. Nothing makes it okay. But I'm here now, and I'm asking you to let me prove that I can be someone worthy of knowing our daughters, not worthy of you. I gave up that right 5 years ago, but worthy of them. Kelly stared at him for a long moment, and Daniel could see the war happening behind her eyes. Protection versus possibility, safety versus risk. The walls she had built versus the tiny crack she had left when she wrote his name on those emergency contact forms. Okay, Kelly said finally. You can see them Saturday. Same rules. But Daniel, I'm watching you. One mistake, and you're done. I won't make mistakes. Not with them. Not ever again. Kelly walked him to the door. As Daniel was leaving, she spoke again, her voice softer. The girls drew you more pictures. They're on the fridge. Dahlia drew the 4 of us as a family. Magnolia drew you wearing a superhero cape because apparently you're her hero now for staying with her at the hospital. Daniel's eyes burned. Can I see them? Kelly hesitated, then nodded. They walked to the kitchen together, and Daniel saw the new drawings hanging on the refrigerator. Dahlia's showed 4 stick figures holding hands with careful labels. Mama, Daddy, me, Nola. Magnolia's was more elaborate. A figure with a cape labeled Daddy, holding hands with a smaller figure labeled Me, while flying through the air. Daniel pressed his hand to his mouth, trying not to sob. Kelly stood beside him, looking at the drawings too. They love you already, Kelly said quietly, and that terrifies me more than anything. Because when you love someone, they have the power to destroy you. I know that better than anyone. Daniel turned to look at her, and the words came out before he could stop them. I love you, Kelly Hammond. I never stopped. I never will. And I know I don't deserve you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life becoming someone who does. Kelly's face crumpled. Don't say things like that. We're doing this for the girls. That's all. I know. I'm sorry. I just needed you to know. Kelly wiped her eyes and walked Daniel to the door. As he was leaving, she grabbed his arm. Daniel, thank you for helping Christy, even though she doesn't deserve it, even though it cost you money and time you don't have. That was something the old Daniel would never have done. I'm not the old Daniel anymore. I can see that, and I don't know what to do with it. Daniel drove home with something fragile and precious blooming in his chest. Hope, not for him and Kelly, that ship had burned to cinders, but hope that he could be the father his daughters needed, hope that he could prove himself worthy of the second chance Kelly was giving him. It was more than he deserved, but he was going to earn it anyway, every single day, for the rest of his life. Chapter 10. The reunion that shook the world. 6 months of supervised visits turned into a year of co-parenting that was equal parts beautiful and agonizing. Daniel was there for everything: school plays where Dahlia sang solos and Magnolia danced with wild enthusiasm, soccer tournaments where he screamed himself hoarse cheering, art shows where Dahlia's work hung alongside pieces by kids twice her age, birthday parties, homework sessions, bedtime stories read over video call when he couldn't be there in person. But Kelly remained behind walls so thick Daniel could barely see her anymore. She coordinated schedules through terse text messages, attended events at different times, dropped the girls off at his apartment for visits without coming inside. She was cooperating, co-parenting, keeping her promise, but nothing more. Daniel accepted it. He had no right to expect anything else. Then, Daniel's consulting firm attracted serious attention. A major corporation wanted to acquire his business, offering money that would finally make him financially stable. His lawyer sent over the contracts, and Daniel stared at them for 3 days straight. This was his chance to rebuild, to finally give his daughters the life they deserved, to prove he could succeed. But all he could think about was Kelly, pregnant with twins, building Hammond and Associates from a hotel room because Daniel had taken everything from her. Daniel called his lawyer. "I'm not selling. Daniel, this is a 7-figure offer. Transfer everything to Hammond and Associates. The company, the contracts, the client list, all of it. Make Kelly Hammond the owner. Have you lost your mind? Maybe, but do it anyway." The papers arrived at Kelly's office on a Thursday afternoon. Daniel didn't hear anything for 4 days. He went about his normal routine, visited his daughters on Saturday, and waited. Kelly showed up at his apartment at midnight on Monday. She pounded on the door hard enough to wake his neighbors, and when Daniel opened it, she pushed past him into his small living room, holding the contract papers, her face a mask of fury and confusion, and something else that looked dangerously like pain. "Explain this," Kelly demanded. "Explain why you're giving me your company." "Because you deserve it." "Don't give me that bullshit. What's the catch? What do you want?" "Nothing. I want nothing." "Liar." Kelly threw the papers at him. "Everyone wants something, especially you. So what is it? Joint custody? Visitation rights? Me?" The last word hung in the air between them like a live wire. "I want you to have what I took from you," Daniel said quietly. 5 years ago I destroyed your security, your trust, your future. You had to rebuild from nothing while pregnant with twins. This company isn't much compared to what you've built, but the contracts are solid, and merging them would expand Hammond and Associates into new markets. It's good business. Take it. And what do you get? Peace. Knowing I finally gave you something back. Kelly stared at him, and something in her expression cracked. "I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because if I accept this, I have to admit you've changed. I have to let go of the anger that's kept me safe for 5 years, and I don't know how to do that, Daniel. I don't know how to stop hating you." "Then keep hating me. Take the company anyway." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. You built an empire from nothing. You raised 2 incredible daughters alone. You survived everything I did to you and came out stronger. This company is yours. Take it. Build something even bigger. Show the world what Kelly Hammond can do when she has every advantage instead of every obstacle." Kelly's hands were shaking. She sat down on his couch like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. "Do you know what you took from me? Not just the company or the marriage. You took the moment I was going to tell you about the twins, that moment when I would have seen your face light up with joy. That moment when we would have held each other and cried happy tears and planned our future. You stole that from me, and I can never get it back. Daniel sat down across from her, keeping distance between them. I know, and I would give anything to undo it. But you can't. You can never undo it. Those 5 years are gone, Daniel. The pregnancy you missed, the births you weren't there for, the first smiles, first words, first steps, all gone. And you want me to just forgive that? Accept your grand gesture and move on? No. I want you to accept that I'm trying, that's all. Just trying to be better. Kelly looked at him with tears streaming down her face. I was in labor for 16 hours with twins. Alone. Do you understand what that means? I was terrified, and in pain, and alone. When they put Dahlia in my arms, she was so small, and perfect, and mine. And then Magnolia. 2 perfect miracles. And I looked at them and thought, their father is missing this. Not with sadness, with rage. Pure, white-hot rage that you were somewhere else living your life while I was bringing your daughters into the world alone. Daniel's vision blurred. Kelly. I built Hammond and Associates brick by brick while breastfeeding twins on 2 hours of sleep. I closed deals while my body was still healing from giving birth. I became successful not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because 3 lives depended on me, and I couldn't fail. Do you understand the pressure of that? The absolute terror of knowing that if you fail, your children suffer. You didn't fail. You succeeded beyond anyone's wildest imagination. But I shouldn't have had to do it alone. Kelly's voice rose to a scream. You should have been there. You should have been holding my hand during labor. You should have been crying when they put our daughters in your arms. You should have been pacing the floor at 3 in the morning. You should have been there for all of it. Kelly was hitting his chest now, her fists pounding against him, releasing 5 years of anguish. Daniel sat there and took it, didn't defend himself, didn't try to stop her. Just let her break. I hate you, Kelly sobbed. I hate you for what you took from us. I know. I hate that I put your name on those emergency contact forms because some stupid part of me still loved you. I know. I hate that our daughters draw pictures of us as a family, and I don't know how to tell them it's not that simple. I know. I hate that you're here now, being everything you should have been then, and I don't know how to trust it, how to trust you, how to risk my heart again when you destroyed it so completely the first time. Daniel's voice broke. I love you, Kelly Hammond. I have never stopped loving you. I love you so much it's killing me. And I know I don't deserve you. I know I threw away the best thing in my life. But I love you desperately, hopelessly, completely. And if that love means letting you go, if it means spending the rest of my life co-parenting our daughters while you build a life without me, then that's what I'll do. Because loving you means wanting you to be happy, even if I'm not part of that happiness. Kelly looked up at him, her face wrecked with tears, and something inside her finally shattered. She kissed him, hard, desperate, angry. 5 years of pain and loss poured into that kiss. It wasn't gentle, it wasn't romantic, it was raw and honest and absolutely devastating. Daniel kissed her back with everything he had. His hands came up to cup her face, tasting her tears, feeling her body shake against his. When they broke apart, they were both sobbing. I don't forgive you, Kelly whispered against his lips. I don't expect you to. This isn't going to be easy. We're going to fight. We're going to have terrible days. I'm going to remember what you did and hate you all over again. I know. The girls have to come first, always. If this doesn't work, if we can't make it work, they don't get hurt. We protect them. Always. And you have to understand that I might never fully trust you again. That part of me will always be waiting for you to leave. I'm never leaving. Not ever. I don't care how hard it gets. Kelly pulled back to look at him, and Daniel saw the war still happening in her eyes. But underneath the pain and anger was something else, something that looked like hope. "I want to try," Kelly said, her voice shaking. "God help me. I want to see if we can build something real from all these broken pieces. But Daniel, if you hurt them, if you hurt me again, I won't. I swear on everything I am, I won't." They held each other on that couch while the city slept around them. They talked about therapy and boundaries and taking things slow, about how to tell Dahlia and Magnolia without confusing them, about the fact that Kelly was terrified and Daniel was desperate, and neither of them knew if this was brave or stupid. As dawn broke, Kelly fell asleep against Daniel's shoulder, exhausted. He stayed awake, watching her sleep, marveling at the impossible chance he had been given. When Kelly woke up hours later, she called her assistant. "Bring the girls here, to Daniel's apartment." Dahlia and Magnolia arrived confused and curious. They found their parents sitting together on the couch, hands intertwined, faces showing signs of tears and something else, something that looked like possibility. "Are you and Daddy dating?" Magnolia asked immediately. "We're trying," Kelly said carefully. "We have a lot to work through, and it's going to be complicated. But yes, we want to see if we can be a family, all four of us." Dahlia studied them with serious eyes. She walked over to Daniel slowly, and he prepared himself for rejection. Instead, she climbed into his lap. "If you make Mama cry again, I'll never forgive you," Dahlia whispered fiercely. "I won't, I promise." "Promises can be broken." "Not this one. Never this one." Magnolia launched herself at both of them, and suddenly they were all tangled together, Kelly and Daniel and Dahlia and Magnolia, a family that had been shattered and was now painfully, carefully being rebuilt. Kelly accepted the company. She merged it with Hammond and Associates and changed the name to Hammond Norton Holdings. The business community buzzed with speculation. Some called it a power move. Others called it forgiveness. Kelly called it what it really was, a second chance. Christy Bell gave birth to a healthy daughter and named her Grace. She sent Kelly and Daniel a card thanking them for the help and promising to be better. Kelly kept the card as a reminder that redemption was possible for everyone. Daniel and Kelly didn't rush. They dated for months while living separately. They went to couples therapy every week. They fought sometimes, terrible fights where old wounds reopened, but they learned to fight fair and heal together. They married 2 years later in Kelly's garden with Dahlia and Magnolia standing between them. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real.